Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm all right, although I'm actually on a space station and you're speaking to a strange synthetic replica with worms inside. How are you?
I'm all good. I'm hitting the year 1969, and peace and love, man. Peace and love. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are into the third episode of Series 6 of Black Mirror, Beyond the Sea. In an alternate 1969, two men on a perilous high-tech mission wrestle with the consequences of an unimaginable tragedy. Good cast, this one, gotta say. It's sort of up there. You got Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett, Kate Mara. It's the three sort of I recognised. So Julian, what were your thoughts on Beyond the Sea?
Well, I really love the cast. I love.
Mm.
I mean, I love the setting. The sort of space station looks good. It looks very minimal, but it sets, but that's appropriate. This sort of barn where most of the action takes place, this rural house, all looks very good. The acting is excellent. Aaron Paul is so inconsistent. Even on Breaking Bad, there are episodes where he's not great, but there are all episodes where he's fantastic. Where was this Aaron Paul in Westworld? He is so horrible in Westworld, so appallingly bad, and he steals the show here. He really is able to act like somebody else is controlling him with different mannerisms, different, he's walking different, he speaks slower, he feels very reserved. Those are all the things that I want actors to do when they play this kind of thing, as though somebody is possessing them or whatever.
Oh, we know it was like
all of that.
Yeah, well, he clearly he's studied like Josh Hartnett, he he tries to emulate certain gestures and stuff. Yeah, I thought it was excellent. I thought the casting were excellent.
The story, maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, one of the things I sort of find interesting, I found this interesting, because again, they set it in 1969. But I don't think it needs to be set in 1969. The year 1969 is for one purpose and one purpose only, which kind of bothers me. For a reason that it didn't need that, it's almost irrelevant. It being 1969 becomes irrelevant very quickly, because you can still have this story and just set it in an indeterminate time.
Yeah, I'm bothered by that too. I sort of was maybe a third of the way through before I was like, wait a minute, I forgot. Yeah, this is set in the space race kind of era, right? I mean, you could forget that. Now, basically, there are, some sort of patronizing, old school attitudes about wives and children, right? So there's a discussion where Aaron Paul's character says, I've hit my kid lots of times, it's good for him. And obviously, as they talk about his wife, he says, she's mine. And he speaks in a way that is, outdated. Although people, there's still guys who talk that way now.
I was going to say, you say it's outdated, but I don't think it is. There's this whole thing about being an alpha and all this other stuff. It doesn't feel outdated at all. It feels a bit Andrew Tate, to be perfectly honest. So I agree that it's there. I think the dates are there to allow certain attitudes and behaviors, but I don't think weirdly, watching it in 2023, I don't think it was needed. I think you could set it now or in the not too distant future and still have some of those attitudes, and people would accept it.
Right. I mean, I don't know why it's set in 1969. So, like, I'm very confused by that decision. And really, this is a very simple story, right? I mean, I think you're alluding to the Sharon Tate murders,
yes,
and the parallel.
It's the Sharon Tate murders and the moon landing.
Okay,
so it's space and this. That's why I think 69 is chosen.
But there's no moon landing here.
No,
right?
but it's that thing of achieving.
Have they already landed on the moon? I mean, or are they just like they've got a big space station? They've got this replica technology. So I'm very confused. Like, if you're gonna set something in this era, like, where's the communism stuff? Where's the space race stuff? Where's the iconography of all of that? There's a lot to do with that. I mean, all of America was watching, these, rockets go up. This was a thing. Why does it not use any of that sort of feel of that era, that iconography? It's really just limited to like a wink wink about the Sharon Tate killings and some costume choices. I mean, really, what does this get you to set it in 69? If you're going to set it in 69, why not use that, right? I mean, this is one of the most basic rules of writing, right? Like, why is it set in this place or in this time? What is it about the story that makes that necessary, or that you're gaining from that, right? Have you thought about how to exploit that? And I just am baffled by this episode.
No, I think that I agree. That's one of the things that sort of got me, was like, you're going to set it in 69, and then you're not going to take advantage of that era. And you wholly could. As you say, I think it tries to make nods. And again, this is one of the things, I think it thinks it's cleverer than it is. Like, the wife, played by Kate Mara, Lana, is reading Valley of the Dolls. And she says about like how it's kind of melodramatic, it's kind of boring, like it didn't really work for her.
It's trashy.
It's trashy, yeah. That's what she said, isn't she? But I mean, that's actually about.
Which it is.
Yeah, but the point is that film's about a bunch of women who's have failed relationships. I'm just literally just double checking, but it's about failed relationships, and then they end up, taking drugs. It's about the 60s culture.
And really Hollywood. Right. I mean, it was the Valley of the Dolls was,
Hollywood.
Hollywood. Right.
Yeah.
And that was a huge hit. That book was very influential.
Yeah. I mean, it was made into a film in 67. So right. It's what's interesting is that, the name Valley of the Dolls. I mean, you've got these two robot people, and this around failed relationships and all this other stuff. So it's a nice little nod. It works to an extent, but like I say, it doesn't feel as a nod, as a little Easter egg, say, but nothing more. But the whole Sharon Tate thing when they introduce, and I'm just like, oh, this has been done to death. We need to move past this whole thing of the Manson family and all that kind of stuff. Felt you could easily do in that, a family of a group, a cult now that is opposed to robotics and this idea of what is human. It's been done 100 times. Hell, Blade Runner, like it's all there. So yeah, all that stuff in 69 feels weird. But some of it's carried forward by the cast. I almost forget the era. I'm like, once that sort of whole the film, I just forget it, and I'm just like, it's an alternate America that has 60s trappings, a bit like certain films will have, Art Deco or whatever, because they want it to have that timeless, 30s feel. So I was fine with that. The other thing I would say is, the story's simple, and I'm carried across because of the performances. I've got to say this one. I want to hammer this home. I was carried through this episode by the performances. But the other thing that sort of bothered me was, like you said, was just the pure logistics of this. So we're now living in America. We're now in America in a time when they have. We don't know if they've conquered space travel, because they have this sort of space station. Not entirely sure what their job is up there. Like, they seem to be asleep an awful lot of the time. They literally appear to be there to, if it gets hit by something, they're there to do repairs. You know,
Right.
they pop on a spacesuit, they go outside, they do repairs, and then they go back to sleep. All right, that seems to be it. It's a two-man job. It's just orbiting the Earth, but I'm not entirely sure what this space station thing does. Like, is it collecting data? Is it putting energy back into something? Like, it's never explained really what the mission is. Right?
They take a lot of physicals.
Yeah. Like,
they do a lot of sleeping.
Yeah. So is it just that they're just testing effects of space travel on people? Is that the thing? Well, if that is the thing, what's the point? You've mastered robotics. So
Yes.
what you've done is you've basically created two incredibly complex, robust, human, realistic robots that I'm assuming don't need to breathe, don't really need to eat. They appear to need to sleep, which I thought, the other thing I thought was weird. So if you're sleeping in both places, what happens then? But then you send the squishy human body that struggles under the pressure of space, is incredibly, it's really sort of precarious up there, into space.
Yeah, gets malnutrition, like the second, like all these horrible things happen to you.
Yeah, like
being in zero gravity,
your muscles start to atrophy
you don't
straight away. Yeah,
nutrients correctly. I mean, like our bodies were not designed for that, right?
Yeah, they say it's been a 2-year mission up there, so they should be having all kinds of problems.
But they're going to be up there for another 3. They're like, this is a 5-year mission. We're not even halfway through it. You've lost your family. You're going to be stuck up here for 3 more years.
Yeah.
They don't go into it as much as they should. But
no,
right.
But that's one of the things I wanted to raise. But yeah, but the base I'm saying, so you've sent the squishy human people into space, so you've got to consider like air pressure. You've got to sort of talk about, 5 years. You've got to provide food, water, all this other stuff, because they never show them sort of eating anything on the space station. Because you see the robots eating, but that's not passing nutrients up to them in space.
Right.
So I was like, well, why didn't you just send the robots into space? Like, that would make more sense. Have the people that live down here, and then there's an alarm. They jump into their chairs, and then they activate into the robots in space, and they repair the thing and come back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is, the positions are reversed.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolutely correct. This seems to be one of those sort of like Brookerisms where, the technology isn't really thought through. The technology isn't important. What's important is the human story that he wants to tell. But again, you could tell the same story.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't tell that story if it were reversed, right? Because then they'd just be on Earth and you'd have killed the person on Earth, right? You need it to be this reverse thing. So why set it? Apparently, I was looking at the notes for the episode. It wasn't always set in 69. So but if you're going to make that change, you need to flesh it out, right? So similarly, like, you could imagine a version of the story, like, let's say they are in, this is a deep space kind of mission, or this is they're out at Jupiter, they're out at Neptune, or something like that, right? Okay. Well, then, you've got a signal problem of how long it would take the signal back home. But, for some reason, you need the people to be out there, Okay, so now, you can kind of do this. You set it in the future, the not too distant future. And you could tell the same story. But why set it in 69? Why have this technology work, as you say, the opposite of what's intuitive? And then also, but why do they even need this? What are they doing on the space station? Have they landed on the moon?
I don't know.
Who developed this technology, right? How do you understand a technology tree of human progression that has this level of technology, right? Doesn't have the internet, but has replicants, right? I mean, okay. I mean, I can see that, but have they thought about that? Is that
they have these robots, but they have cars without power steering.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And there's there's no electric battery for. Now they do seem for the scouts. Now they do seem like wormy or something. Like they're kind of like bioengineered
Yeah.
replicants or something, which is cool. I mean, it's a cool idea, but again, it's like, well, what is the technology that produced that? I mean, I don't need to meet the creator and, like news on the march, Bob has created this wonderful replicant technology that will revolutionize our fighting soldiers in Vietnam. I mean, I don't need tons of that stuff, but I need
Mm.
something to even understand, like, what is the world we're in?
I agree. But we've said this before about these episodes where you're sort of like, this is what I said about Nosedive. You're shown such a blinkered view of this story because he focuses on the story and often doesn't tell the story very well. That when you start to pick away the technology, you just go, well, this doesn't make any sense because this would have had real world ramifications well beyond this story. And I know you're going like, well, you're going to have to accept it. It's just one of those MacGuffins you accept, but it's not. It's like, this isn't how this works. This is when we're sort of like, you have to work it through. This is what people keep saying. Oh, well, he takes it all the way through. This is, it's sort of really, this is well thought out sci-fi. It's clearly not. Like this is, I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, as you say, we've said with things, I will give things a pass if something else is really good, right? And in this, the acting is actually really good. I'm enjoying the acting. I think the performances are what are carrying me through. I'm actually sort of the relationships between the characters is working for me. That's what's carrying me through because I think the technology is stupid. Like the logistics really gets on my nerves. Because there's a point where they talk about Lana says about because when he's attacked, David Ross, who played by Josh Hartnett, loses his replicant. His replica is destroyed in a fire when his family is killed. And so Lana, Aaron Paul's, who plays Cliff, she says, well, why can't they provide him with a new one? And Aaron Paul just sort of says, well, it's not that straightforward. They built the last ones when we were here. Sort of suggesting that there's a personal connection between the person and the replicant. Right. But then they're easily happily swapping between them.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't understand that. That did seem a little too easy to do for me too. And it's a minor thing, but like, where do the replicas go? You sort of see them whenever Aaron Paul will say, "Oh, there's a crisis on the station, right? I got to get up there." He always walks off screen.
Well, there's a chair. They all sit in that chair, don't they? There's like a dentist chair they both have to sit in for them to
on the space station.
No, in the house. So Aaron,
do we see that? Do we see the replica?
Yes, you see it at least once or twice. Aaron Paul has one in a room, and he has like a curtain that goes round it to hide it off. And you see that very early on. You see that Josh Hartnett's character David has one as well, but his is a bit more luxurious. And obviously, the point is they're two lifestyles that they've set up. So you do see like this weird dentist chair thing that they've got. They fall asleep in them at the beginning. Actually, that's how you see. You see them sort of roll back. And these sort of dentist chair kind of things.
So that's where they go to the replicas go when they're not being used. Yeah. I mean, I don't feel it. I don't, like the human drama there is fine, right? And as you say, the actors are, the standout element here. The ending shit. We'll get to that, but the technology is here for that personal story, but nothing about that technology do I buy. Nothing about it. The stuff that is interesting, like that it's kind of like worms inside the hand, that sort of keeps moving. Okay. The stuff that is interesting has no explanation.
Yeah.
It's an alternate 1969. Okay, well, in alternate universes, right? You have some reason that they diverged, right? Some point of diversion in the timeline, right? Or, it has a different kind of technology that's been developed, or something like that. We have no idea what that is. So, I mean, nothing on the most technical levels here, about the technology, about the timeline, makes any kind of sense at all.
No. Well, the other thing, because even let's say about logistics, this is all from NASA, right? So the two things are the other thing that sort of kind of bothered me. So we go back to those chairs that they go into, right? So what you're telling me is that NASA is not only letting this technology out into the world, where it'll just live on its go through its daily routine. They've got kids around it. They've got other things going on. Like, no one seems to come in and monitor this stuff. No. This would not be left. This would not be let out of. They would be on a compound. If anything, I think this would make it more interesting if they were on the same campus, or kind of like, they're on a military base. I just can't believe they, like, Aaron Paul's like, we've moved to the country. It's wonderful. And I've taken this technology and I've just stored it in a room in my house. I'm just like, what? That doesn't feel right. Like, how much power is this taking? Like, this was like, this makes no sense. And I know you've got to accept all this stuff, but when it's sort of, there's no explanation given, or and I want to highlight as well, this is the longest episode to date at 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And there are films that are this length and contain more information and, tighter plotting. So it's not even we're going like, well, you had to cram it into 50 minutes. No, he's got like almost feature length with this. And
yeah, it is feature length.
Yeah, and still managed to miss a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, somebody could easily knock us for always sort of talking about like what we would do, right? But the truth is that if you're going to present this stuff, it should at least make sense. And there are circumstances in which, like you say, why do they have this technology? You never see NASA, right? You never see central control. You don't know what they're doing on the space station. You don't know why this is important. You don't know why they have this technology. And it's just like, this is a perk. I mean, you kind of get the sense that this is a perk, and it is a way of getting people to agree to being on a space station for that long, right? That, hey, you're not going to be separated, and there was a difference between how the US did, and still is, between how long we put astronauts up versus, say, the Soviets, or the Russians, where they would just do it for like a year plus, and we're like, oh, that's not good. But they don't give a shit, right, about their own people, and never have, which is, we still see today. But so, you have these questions about why this is just a perk. Why are you allowed to take this to, why are there not security guards after the murder, right? To guard this technology. What does the popular world know about this technology? We see a couple newspaper clippings, but obviously there's a cult going around murdering.
They are well known. This is the bit that the other thing that one of the at the beginning of the episode, towards the beginning, like David Ross, Josh Hartnett goes out with his family to the cinema, and they watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And when they come, as they were leaving, a young couple comes up to them and like, "You're David Ross, do you mind?" And they sort of poke him, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's so realistic." You don't quite know. You don't know these things yet. Because you're a bit like, "Well, that's weird," and that obviously you learn this as you go. So they're well known, and also because obviously later on, when they go, when Lana takes David in Cliff's body to the bookshop, and the shop owner recognizes and says, "Oh my god, you're Cliff Stanfield." And he's like, "Yes, I am." So they're recognized. They are known commodities. They are known celebrities. And I would say that, the ones that come and kill David Ross and his family, or at least his replicant and his family, that cult, it's so, and this is what pissed me off. Because then they were like, there's the line of like, well, they handed themselves in.
Right.
At the police station, and then Cliff's like, but we're far enough out of town, or far enough away from California, that we're safe. And as you say, there's no communication with NASA, no security. Like, if I was his wife,
Yes.
I'd be going like, I'm sorry, we're far enough away. That's not good enough.
And everybody knows we're here,
Yeah,
right?
we're
We
recognized.
might not go into town often, but it's not a secret that we're here,
No.
you know.
Yeah, it's also sort of like passed over repeatedly,
Well,
these little things. I'm just like, oh,
I think that the turning them in or them being caught is
no,
there
they're not
to.
caught. They turn
No, I know.
themselves in.
But I'm saying having them under arrest, having them caught, right,
Mm.
is there so that because you're not supposed to spend the rest of the episode thinking, is this going to happen again, right? Because you're supposed to focus on the human drama there. But this is just the inciting incident, right, of the whole story, right? But you don't want the audience to think this is going to happen again. But of course, the audience is going to think that because you don't have an explanation for really what is going on in the world. And so part of the problem is, I was saying that people might complain that we, want certain things or we rewrite certain things. But the truth is when you have these choices in your script, you beg certain questions.
Yes.
And when your audience is asking, where's NASA? Where's the security? How expensive are these things? Obviously, everybody knows about this. Obviously, there is a movement against them. This is part of the public debate. Is there more public debate about this after the slayings? I mean, is there talk radio going like, they had a point, didn't they? I mean, people said that after the Manson stuff, where it was like, yeah, the world's gone crazy. How did the world respond to any of that? Why, have we even landed on the moon? What are we doing in this? How did they get this technology? None of these questions make any sense.
Well, the thing is, let's say
you're
when you
forced to ask them.
exactly. Well, the thing is, you say if you're going to call things, make references or call things up, you've got to address them. They refer to the 4 people that come in as a cult. But by putting it in 69, you obviously and doing it the way they do it, you are clearly calling up, making reference to the Manson family. Well, let's be clear, it wasn't Charles Manson that was there, right? He was not there when the killings took place, and it wasn't his entire cult. It was actually 4 people that took it upon themselves.
Charlie Manson didn't kill nobody.
Well, technically, I don't think he did. But he obviously did a lot of. But like, my point is,
people like to say that, right? Like,
But
he
the
was
point,
innocent.
But the point is, they may have handed himself in. Okay, well, what about the rest of the cult? Are there other people out there? Like he's going, oh, we're safe in California, right? But there could be a bunch of hippies on a road trip out to get you right now. Like,
I saw Easy Rider. I mean, they're scary people.
Yeah, exactly. Or even one of the Dirty Harry films has that. I think it's 3 has this idea. Like it throws things up and then tries to sort of like just like pass them off and run over them as quickly as possible because all it wants to focus in on is this relationship between Lana, David, and Ross. Create this sort of grief-stricken sort of love triangle around this painting. However, one of the things that sort of frustrated me is all the stuff that we've talked about could fuel the relationship triangle. Lana calling and saying, "I want security," and Cliff saying, "No, I'm the man. I should look after. I can defend my own family." Making that relationship. Yeah, I can. This is what I was like. I want Cliff to be. He's meant to be a man's man. I hunt and I cut wood and all this other stuff, right? That was what I was thinking. Like he should be calling away. I don't want security. NASA should turn up and he should turn it away and be like, "No, I defend my own family." Because at the end of the story, is he couldn't defend his own family, and it's his own choice that got them killed, as it were, or whatever. But that also puts a strain on the relationship. That sort of thing. And this, have this thing about the cost of it being a thing where like NASA are saying, "Look, we can't afford to lose another one. You're too expensive." Like you need all this stuff up front to create more tension, but it's not there. It just so it's playing in my head the entire time for the rest of the episode. Unfortunately, where I'm almost expecting something or something should happen, and it just doesn't.
You mean a follow up on the murder, right?
Yeah,
Something following through, right? But if we had more of an idea of like how rare these sentiments are, what's going on with security, et cetera, we might not be stuck in that position of waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? But because we don't know anything, these things are invoked and then never explained. They're invoked and then, it's like it's asking you to ask these questions. And they're not interesting philosophical questions. They're just practical questions about what the hell am I watching?
Yeah.
Why does this matter? How does this world work?
Yeah. Well,
none of which really makes sense. Right?
No, and that's the problem. And then it sort of starts to compound because after the event happens, and you have David Ross's replica gets destroyed, and so he wakes up in the space station, and he's all like shook up, and obviously he then finds out exactly what's happened, and he can't go back. Like his replica is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So we then have a scene where Cliff has gone back to Earth, like he's in his comfy bed, and he's woken up in his replica, and he's talking to Lana, and like there's a line where Cliff's like, "Yeah, I've spoken to ground control, and they say to just leave him be. Like he's clearly grieving, he's going through a thing, and they're saying just leave him be." And I'm going like, you've just left a man who's witnessed the murder of his family, who's suffered the trauma of attack, but not the physical things. He's trapped in a small tin can, and you're going to leave him alone? Like psychologically, that's the worst thing. Like it feels like this was the moment they said that, I was like, oh, he doesn't care about like any kind of logic at this point. Like, and again, this is, we know I'm talking about, like how all this should build towards the finale being the shock at the end should be more. There should be a point where like Cliff says, I'm not going to be around for a week. I've got to spend time with David up there. He needs human contact. He needs something real. I'm going to stay up there, and they should build a relationship. The whole sort of second half, him deciding to share his replica, should be something that's built out of an affection and almost like a, well, we're in this together, and I'm going to help you through this. And
that's a good point, because it seems almost arbitrary, right? Like it seems like they're very distant with each other.
Considering they would have been launched,
a very good point.
Considering they would have trained together, launched together, lived there together.
Right, exactly. I mean, like the astronauts in real life are busy patting each other on the back and joking about, the stuff they snuck onto the Apollo, against. Like, why would you do that? But they're joking about that shit, And in this version, everybody is, distant. I mean, the two of them are so distant. Even, and I guess that's supposed to be a reflection on masculinity of this era, but still
possibly
it doesn't work.
Colleagues at work or something, sort of men being colleagues at work, but like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're
right. It doesn't.
Yeah, because the ending should feel like a massive betrayal, but it just feels like a psycho on a tantrum is what it ends up feeling like. But
so I mean, the ending, is that Cliff, David. I always confuse them. The Josh Hartnett guy who has lost his family. Basically, traps, gets Aaron Paul to go outside and handle something that's not really broken. Uses the time to go to Earth, to the replica, and murder the family. Why?
Don't know.
I mean, if I can't have them, nobody can. Well, I mean, like I watch, never in history has somebody been like, like Batman, right? I watched my parents be murdered. I'm gonna go out and murder a lot of parents now. Like, what is the basis for this? I don't understand. I mean, it's like, God, I mean, it makes like M. Night Shyamalan twist endings look like the most logical things. Nobody can complain about this.
No,
and not. Nobody can complain about that and not this.
100%. And this is where I think like this story, like, there's a midsection where, well, there's a very short section when they are sharing the replica that kind of works. Like it's fine. It's, they're doing the painting. It's all very Richard Gere. It all feels fine, right? I'm all sort of okay with that. I don't know why Richard Gere comes away. It just feels like this would be a Richard Gere kind of film in like the early 90s. George Clooney in the early 2000s. But there's this sort of thing where I'm like, that's all working. And then, like I say, it just switches. But the problem is, because there's been no build-up, and I know you're right, I do keep rewriting these things, and I apologize. But this is where it should be like there's that brotherly sort of connection should form. And then he becomes obsessed with Lana, which I kind of like, because he tried, But then it should be this thing of like they have a bit of a falling out. And then, but the obsession in being trapped in... it should be being the isolation, the cabin fever of being trapped in the shuttle, in the space station, should be one of those major factors. Like him literally climbing the walls. Like, what do I do? Like, I can't get out of this place. Like, going crazy. Until he's like, and Aaron Paul saying, look, you're in such a state now, I can't trust you with my family. And so the fear of never going back. And so him saying, like, but you don't know what it's like. I've got to live with these memories of my family, the grief, and I can't do anything. Like, you should see that despair, that spiral into insanity. That would make and then for him to be like, the point being, you've now got to be exactly the same as me. It's me and you trapped in here together because you've got no reason to go back. It's not about Lana. It's about me having a companion in this space station, something like that. Just give me something about why this happens, because that switch really doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I mean, you're right. And I think that there's so little in the space station. It looks great. I mean, it evokes sort of Solaris feels for me. I mean, there's even a sort of reference to that. But I would like more of that space station. And you're right. Basically, like an hour a week is not enough to keep a person sane, right?
Yeah.
Like he's drawing, he again, like, what the hell are they doing on the space station, right? I mean, he's got all of his free time is spent drawing. Yeah, it's very bizarre. But you're right that basically what you're pointing out is that the setting doesn't. We've already said the setting doesn't. The murder doesn't. The inciting incident doesn't work. The technology doesn't work. What all of that is sacrificed for is the love triangle and the drama, which kind of doesn't work either. And you're pointing out, really at its heart, all of that is building toward this betrayal, murderous ending, which absolutely doesn't. And it's so frustrating to me because you see the money. You see the thoughtful, you see the set design, right? You see even just the sort of Bob Ross painting stuff. I mean, I love The Tree of Life, the Terrence Malick movie, which is set in kind of the same era, and deals with some of the same issues of masculinity and fatherhood and stuff. But, that goes deep into it. This is like, I mean, there's something here that's really good. There's something here that is evocative and working on a kind of like vague emotional level. But nothing is really working as a story. And it's so frustrating to me that this is as poorly done as it is, given how much money and how much time and how much great acting is spent on this. That they wouldn't care enough to think about these elements of the script, or like think about your setting, think about the technology, think about how you could set up that ending better if you're really committed to that ending, which I don't think is the best ending anyway. Does it add anything that he kills the family? I mean, if the ending were just
not because of what you get on screen. No, it doesn't add anything to what we have on screen. A lot of it, it becomes like this. He has a psychological break. You go, okay, well, why? Because he's obsessed with Lana? Is that it? Well, if he's obsessed with her, then why did he kill her? You know, it,
Why doesn't he mention his own? Like he says, like Lana wants me, right? She clearly doesn't. I mean, she's not happy in her marriage, happy. But it's it's 69, right? Like
yeah.
this is not,
The thing is,
I mean, it's not the present day.
I'm just
Why,
looking through.
he doesn't even mention his family anymore. He's
No,
not like, I love my wife, like
well,
he's like,
yeah, or his kids, or anything. There's, yeah, it's sort of just, it just sort of, you're supposed to forget that, and it becomes about this obsession with replacing them. Is if that was the case, right? If that's the case, and he's replaced them, why doesn't he kill Aaron Paul's character on the space station, and then just be a sole person going back in the replica?
It's easy to do, right? You got him to go outside, right? We're worried that's going to happen. That makes way more sense than killing his family. His family's what you want, right?
Because now you're trapped in a space station with someone who despises you, and then when you do get to Earth, you're going to go from being trapped inside a space station to being trapped inside a cell.
Right, exactly.
So it's just it makes no sense.
It's hard to think of a worse ending to this. I mean, if Davis decided that he couldn't kill Aaron Paul, right? And he instead said, I'm going to throw myself out of an airlock. That would be a better ending than this. Like, it's hard to think of a worse ending than this. I killed the family that I wanted, having no history of mental problems until my family was killed. And I duplicated the crime that traumatized me. And that's how I rewarded somebody letting me spend time with their family. I mean, none of this makes any sense. It doesn't make sense from a psychological angle. It doesn't make sense from a storytelling angle. It doesn't make sense from a relationship angle, from just the terms of the story that we've been given.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just
bad.
Yes. It's just ill thought out and ill put together. I'm just going through some of the reviews because I'm always curious about this as we get to the end, right?
This is how you torment yourself.
I do, and I'm sorry. I've just gone through some of the 10s on this episode, and people going like, because clearly other people have pointed out the plot hole that we have, that like, well, why are you sending the people in space and not the replicas, right? It's in some of the reviews I saw. And there's all these people going, it's not a plot hole, it's explained. They explain it's because it's about testing the human body, because this is early in the space race, and they want to test the endurance of the human body in space. I'm still going, why? Because you've got durable robots that you can send instead. Like, it's not fixed by explaining that, because if that's the point of the mission, is to spend 5 years in space and see the effects on the human body, well, you're not doing much because they're just lying around. What they should be doing is a lot more. They should actually be living life in space. So it's even worse.
Right. And at that point, like, you would have a mission that did a year. You'd have a mission that did, 2 years. You'd have a mission that did 2.5 years.
Exactly.
You wouldn't just go, right, we're going to put them up there for 5 years and build this enormous space station.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be like, no, put them in an Apollo capsule for a year and see what happens,
Well, the other thing is, just to highlight this, is because they seem to come out every week to do a physical. Well, let me put it this way. If you lie in bed for a week and then get out, because there is gravity on this space station. If you were to lay in bed for a week after week, even if you did lie in bed for a week, you would not be able to stand up after. Your muscles would atrophy, your joints would stiffen, you would just collapse. So even that doesn't work. It's ridiculous. It's a stupidly thought out thing. The more I talk about this, the more irritated I am by this episode and disappointed.
Yes. No, the more you think about it, the more you talk about it, the angrier I get, right?
Yeah.
And I get angry that so much, and admittedly, so much talent is wasted. Brooker's talent,
let's not throw that about, please. I'm sort of beginning to question that at this point.
Well, come on. We spent half a year, of episodes on Black Mirror. obviously we have respect for what the show is doing, but I mean, no, but I mean it. Like, I mean, Brooker's got talent.
Mm.
Maybe it needs to be reined in a little here or there, but I mean, this is a good show. This is a talented guy. There's great acting. There's great, I
This
mean,
is
money and set design and
oh
all of
yeah, no,
this.
the production on
And
this
it's
is
for
fantastic.
an
Yeah,
episode that just has these problems that are so thoughtless and stupid. That
especially for the runtime. If this was
yes.
45 to 50 minutes long, again, I would start to forgive it for certain things. But the fact I sat through an hour 20 for
Mm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
egregious. That's the problem I have.
Yeah.
That's when I'm like, so you said about the talent. It makes me think, and we've obviously got when we get to the end of this season, we've got a bit of a wrap up, and we're going to do our top
Mm-hmm.
five and that sort of thing, right? But one of the things I'm now starting, and I think I've been thinking this for a while as we've gone through this.
Uh-oh.
There are some episodes that are good, and you say like I think Brooker is best. Some of the best episodes for me, I like some of the low tech, tight, small stories. Like and he's good at those. Going back to the last season, like how much we thought how well Striking Vipers worked,
Mm.
but
Mm-hmm.
the technology is sort of minimal in that. But the human story is actually really good. Great
Mm-hmm.
cast, really works incredibly
Mm.
well. And then you come to this and you're like, okay, it's a similar thing. You're going for that human connection. There's love and there's emotion in it, but like this one doesn't work because of all these other elements. Because you're introducing a level of technology where like, oh, a VR headset versus a space race robotic technology that gives you photorealistic humans. I'm like, this
Well,
is
and
where I'm
also the
thinking,
ability to project yourself into them and experience what they're experiencing
yeah,
in real time
yeah.
from a space
Yes,
station.
yeah.
Right.
According to some people, they need to explore space with basic technology to sort of, this is where I'm thinking like this should be like idea or story by Charlie Brooker,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
screenplay by da da da.
Right.
That's
Or
where on my
Brooker
head's.
adds so and so, right? Which
Yeah,
he's done
exactly.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's where I'm thinking like he needs another set of
Mm.
eyes. Um, this
Yeah.
is like in wrestling terms, this is a Vince Russo situation where like Vince Russo came in and did a lot of the storytelling and a lot of the big stuff in the 90s for WWF, and everyone's like, wow, this is amazing. And then you sort of learn, yeah, but he also went through filters at times where like Vince McMahon or someone else would be like,
Mm.
I like it, but can we just shift this and this? And it just works a lot better. And I sort of feel like that's sort of like where Brooker's at, where he's able to do what he wants, but he needs an editor or he needs someone to be like, what about this? Try doing it this way. Or what about that? Asking those questions that we're asking and saying like, you need to answer these.
Well, and this episode, I mean, this episode is a train wreck. From a logical perspective. I mean, it's not, I didn't hate watching it, but I mean,
No,
the same thing that like, you've pointed out that basically it said in 1969 in order to have a parallel to the Sharon Tate murders. I mean, like, that's like, or you're talking about like, or Valley of the Dolls, right? There's this sort of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, like kind of cheekiness to it, but it's all these aspects are all utterly superficial, right? So it's like Le Mer, right? It's, Beyond the Sea, the use of that song. Love that song. It's great. It's sort of like, it's the Sea of Tranquility. Okay, is that clever? It's not really clever. I mean, again, it's sort of like a one note. I mean, it's almost like a 14-year-old in a creative writing class going like, no, you don't get it. Like there are two kinds of C's here. Okay, go fuck yourself. I do get it. It's not as clever as you think, bro.
yeah.
And this is so to return to your point about Brooker, like, what I keep finding myself thinking, and I don't want to, we'll revisit all of this at the end. But what I keep finding myself thinking is, that's the third episode of the first season, is the only episode not written by Brooker or there's one other episode that's a story by him. And he co-wrote, with somebody else, some episodes, but most of the episodes are straight up by him. I think about the difference between that and Rod Serling. And, where Serling was like, I'm the showrunner. I get to decide what goes on air. I'm going to write the majority of episodes. But, Walter Madison is coming in. And, all these other writers are coming in and doing episodes that he is acting in an editorial capacity for. And I think that it's that having those multiple voices gets you out of the head. Like, it's so claustrophobic, like being in the head of Charlie Brooker, season after season, episode after episode. And it's he's a smart guy. He's a good writer. He's done good stuff. He's got, some good instincts. He's also got some bad instincts. And he needs to identify those and have maybe some editorial control over him. But also, it would be great. Like, I can imagine if we just had like the Rod Serling episodes of Twilight Zone, and he just was allowed to just go off. Because I mean, he does brilliant episodes, but he also does some of the weaker episodes too.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, and you could see like the same. There's something about being just trapped in that same mind over and over, cycling through some of the same obsessions, the same iterations with different, slightly different takes. That Twilight Zone benefits so much from getting out of that, and not just doing different things, but getting out of that claustrophobic feeling of one man's head. And Brooker's head is more claustrophobic than Rod Serling's to begin with. So I do sort of feel like maybe in the era of prestige television, where, the equivalent of a Twilight Zone anthology is longer, more money, comes out rarer, has fewer episodes, isn't doing the week by week kind of thing, and has more of a central vision at the core of it. Well, maybe that central vision thing is part of the problem. And really, Twilight Zone did have a central vision, and you need to really mimic that rather than just be the Charlie Brooker show, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I think you're right. It's like have a statement of intent, and that's the objective you're always trying to hit. And it hasn't always got to be Charlie Brooker's idea. You can, go back and, like you say, let somebody else, it's story by, but written by, or those kinds of things, or let somebody else come in and do a version. But the intent is, here's the criteria that your episode's got to hit. Like, it's got to be about technology. It's going to have this thing. It's got to be, maybe it doesn't always have to be pessimistic, but it's got to have these sort of elements. That's what you're aiming for. It's a bit like, I'm thinking about, when you get like an anthology book, right? And you'll get one. I've got plenty here. You'll have, like, I'm just looking up this one I've got called Fighters of Fear, occult detective stories, right? And it's basically all these sort of like from across the eras. But that's like a list of like 30 stories written by different, all about occult detectives from different times. It goes back from the 1800s through to more recent, but they're all about the same thing. And you'll get those different sort of like, ideas or interpretations from different time periods or different sort of like, class perspectives or whatever. But it's still about that supernatural thing. So they sort of hang together with that sort of intent. But yeah, I think maybe that's what we're looking. I'm just getting like, oh, it's all the same thing. And he's obviously hooked up on certain things. Like simulation theory is clearly not too far away from his mind at any point. I don't know. I agree, though. I think you're right. I think there's something there. We're gonna have to come back to this, I think, when we get through the last two episodes. At this point, any final thoughts then for Beyond the Sea?
Just that it's disappointing to me. It's disappointing to me how much is good here, but how ultimately it collapses beneath its own weight. And that gets to what you were just saying. I mean, this should not go out in this state. I mean, this is the logical equivalent of just like something going out with just such poor editing, such poor special effects. Where you say this is embarrassing. This episode is embarrassing. Now I don't hate it. Look, if your embarrassments are this good, and have this much to say for them, I mean, this is not a horrible episode. This is not, there are elements that are poorly done. There are elements that are bad, but this is not painful to watch. right? But it is embarrassing that it goes out with these kinds of problems.
Yeah, I think for me, it's it. I think as I sort of hammered home a little bit at the beginning, it's like the performances is what carries me through this. There are several scenes, as you said, sort of like, Aaron Paul in particular, sort of his ability to sort of mimic Josh Hartnett in several scenes, and it's easy to know, who's who when they're coming down in the replicant and stuff. And if anything, it's a missed opportunity. They should have done that. Like, if have him coming downstairs, and Lana's been able to pick up on that, and he's saying that he's Cliff, but she recognizes that it's David from some sort of mannerism that he does. Like, you could easily do that. The performances are that good. But even some of the emotional confrontations, like the actually sort of like the conversation, but some of the conversations between Lana and David in Cliff's replicant are really good. They're quite heartfelt when she talks about how lonely she is, and this sort of stuff. Like, it's emotional. It works. Even some of the confrontations up on the space station work. There's some interactions there that I think are good. When he first sees the house and they have a bit of a connection about, if I had something this good, I'd hang it on my wall in my house. Like, and there's a moment, and even in Josh Hartnett, like, there's that moment of sort of like hope of like, I've created something, I've got a connection. Like, all those are really good. And I think that's why I get so annoyed with the rest of it, when I'm like, there's some really great scenes in this, but they're contained within a mess of an episode that like just has not been thought through. Is a sort of a, wouldn't this be cool kind of idea, and just sort of, like you say, just isn't able to sort of progress under its own weight, unfortunately. And sort of the eventual result is especially at 1 hour 20, that's what sort of gets me. The length of this is where it becomes a real problem. But yeah, no, it's just a real shame. I think this lingers, and as you say, there are shows that I would think are never ever even this good, but yeah, this is not good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, it's no Joan is awful.
When I come, we'll get to it at the end of the season. But like, going back, I think looking at some of these, and I mean, this has got the same as, this is 7.4, the same as Joan is awful. And Lock Henry's got a 7.3. So it's just so far in this season, like, we're in that similar realm. But I think they're very in difference. So we shall see. 2 episodes left. We've got Maisie Daisy and Demon 79. So we'll see see how they work for us.
And how more this season will deviate from the Black Mirror norm.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, when we get to the end of this, I wonder, is this Charlie Brooker done with Black Mirror? I think we seem to have deviated enough now that he's sort of, is he bored with it that he'll try and do something else? Be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't mind, as we've said, sort of bringing in some other voices, and being the Charlie Brooker edited Black Mirror anthology,
Yes.
I mean, because people love Black Mirror. There's a reason why these actors, Josh Hartnett and Aaron Paul, and, Mira, who's brilliant, are agreeing to be in this, right? You could get, maybe not Neil Gaiman, but you could get, like, the best writers. You could get a lot of people to pitch an episode.
Easily.
Yeah. And I think that's the way to go. I mean, I would love to see that kind of thing. Which, all you have to do is, you still have to be a showrunner, right? I mean, but it'd be, paycheck for Brooker. And maybe he does an episode, maybe not, but I mean, I do think that it's got to move in that direction.
I think so. Have him do the opener. I mean, like, I always think of like Chris Carter on the X-Files. Like, he was a showrunner, but he always wrote he wrote and directed the first episode and the last episode of every season. Like, that was the point, really, for a long time. Do something similar. Give him 2 episodes, the first and the last, and then 4 or 5 in the middle that are done by somebody else.
Mhm.
Anyway, we'll come to that at the end. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there we go. What are your thoughts? Do you think that
Scott and Julian missed the boat, and this is a brilliant episode.
should we
It
not
interrogates the human soul.
That's right. Are we not beyond the sea, but we should be buried or left at sea? Maybe that's how you feel we should be. Let us know. Reach out to us on X at PodTimeSpace or at under 20th Century Geek on all other social media. But also leave a review. Let us know what you think of the whole show and all of our sort of Black Mirror stuff on your podcast catcher. And if you really like what we're doing, and as we've said, we talk about Rod Serling. We are doing Trekking Through the Twilight Zone. We're up to season 4 now on Patreon. So go check out over there. We've got a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, we're almost done. On the next couple of days, Maisie Daisy. So anyway, Julian, thank you very much for discussing.
My pleasure.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And we'll see you on the next episode.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.